Alright, so we're going to start talking about the rules of probability. The first rule of probability is that any probability, which I'll call the event probability of event A, has to be in between 0 and 1, and it is the long range success rate of an event. And we've already talked about the probability that something has a probability of 1 happens all the time, and something that has a probability of 0 is something that never happens. And so generally speaking, we talk about things that are more in between those two things. Rule number 2, there's actually going to be the next rule in here. Rule number 2 is all possible outcomes, probabilities, need to add to 1. So if you have flipping a coin and you got heads and tails, and you got 1/2 for tails and 1/2 for heads, that totals up to 1. If you roll the dice, all of them have the probability of 1/6. And we're not saying that everything has to be the same, because if we did rolling 2 dice and adding them together, it would be different. Now you can count from the other day what we did with the dice, but it's 1/36 add up to be 2, 2 out of 36 add up to be 3, and so on. And if you have a chance to add these all up, you will see that they add up to be 36 out of 36, which is 1. Alright, if all of the outcomes in the sample space are equally likely, then the probability that event A happens is equal to the number. Actually, I should give myself more space. Number of outcomes corresponding to A over total number of outcomes. Probability number 4. When talking about a complement, that means that the probability something doesn't happen. So if you think that there's a 30% chance of rain, that means that there is a 70% chance of no rain. So the probability that A doesn't happen, which is A complement, is 1 minus the probability of A. And finally, if probability of event A and probability of event B don't have any events in common, then the probability of A or the probability of B is equal to the probability of A plus the probability of B. Now, this comes under two different definitions, anytime we ask about the probability of A or B, that's considered a union. Anytime we have or, that's a union. And anytime we have, let me use a different color. Anytime we have two events that don't have anything in common, those are called mutually exclusive. Alright, so other ones that we have is an empty event, which is not exactly in this section, so I'm not going to worry about it. Intersect means that both events happen. So union was or, intersect is and. And Venn diagrams, when we get to these are the good old-fashioned, you got two circles, and we'll call this event A and event B, and they could help us do some of these problems that we have coming up. We talked about complement. Complement means doesn't happen. Alright, so the other day we went through the different possibilities of rolling dice, and if you go through and you count up how many ways we can get adding up to 2, we'd only have 1 and 1. For 3, we'd only have 1 and 2 and 2 and 1. So, doing a quick count here, these are the probabilities that you roll 2 dice and you add up to be this. So, when asked the question, what's the probability of rolling a 4? The answer is 3 out of 36. For B, they said, what is the probability of rolling not a 36? I'm sorry, rolling not a 4. And so I would do 1 minus 3 over 36, which is 33 over 36, which is the complement of letter A. Now for C, what is the probability of rolling 2 dice and adding up and getting 41? Would be 0, because you cannot add all of these numbers to get 41. For letter D, we go back to the flipping coin episode or chart, and so we had 4 tails. We had heads, tails, 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 heads, tails, 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 heads, tails, and tails, 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 heads. And in the middle here we had, not going to go through them all, but we had what's left, which we had 6 determinations. So what is the probability of flipping a head 2 or more times? So we got 6 from the middle, 4 from number 3, and 1 from 4. And there weren't 16 choices, there were 16 choices. So 6 out of 16 plus 4 out of 16 plus 1 out of 16 is 11 out of 16. 36 is for the dice. 16 is for the flipping the coins 4 times. For letter E, they asked the choices of getting 1 through 9. And so each one has equal chance of getting picked. So those are my probabilities. And then it says, what is the probability of getting less than 3? Well, less than 3 is 1 or 2. So 1/9 plus 1/9 is 2/9. Alright, for the last problem, the first thing that you want to do is, in order to prove that these are probability tables, you want to add 0.301 plus 0.176 plus ... plus 0.046 at the end. And in order for this to be a probability model, they need to add up B1. For B, what's the probability of choosing an even number? So I'm going to choose 0.176 is 2, plus 0.097 is 4, plus 0.067 and 0.046. And that gives me a total of 0.386. And finally, what is the probability of having a number that is less than or equal to 7? Well, you can either add up all of the first 7, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 and just subtract off the ones that do not take part. So 8 and 9 are the only numbers that are not less than or equal to 7. So I'm simply going to do 1 minus those other two numbers, and that will give me the answer of 0.903. And that's it for this lesson. I will be back on Thursday.